Turn up the dive, feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airwaves, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's so I remember I share and subscribe. Join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Spectrum live today here on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, Barnaby Jones, and we have an amazing guest with us today. Mike Ricksecker will be joining us in just a moment here to talk all about the shadow realms and shadow people and time. So before we get to that, guys, today is August 1st. That means on our Patreon, Wisconsin Caps, our series on the Trail of Undiscovered Beasts is now available. You guys can go check that out. Show your support for all things here at Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, and you can see our brand new series on the Trail of Undiscovered Beasts. If you also want to show your support, you can head on over to wisconsincaps.com, click on Shop Our Store, and you can wear and show and support all of our merchandise there. If you guys want to see our team in person, we are going to be at Squonkapalooza in August 10th, Johnstown, Pennsylvania. We are going to be there along with a bunch of other great guests. We are also bringing the Hide and Adventure traveling exhibit out there, so if you guys missed it up here in Upper Michigan, it will be there to check out. And just announced, guys, we are going to be at the Bell City Paracon Saturday, November 2nd. It's in Kenosha, Wisconsin. It is labeled as Summers, Wisconsin because of the address, but it's down in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And we are going to be at CryptidCon in Lexington, Kentucky in November, and Fond du Lac, Wisconsin at Metapara Pros Soul and Synergy Expo in November 30th, as well as a bunch of libraries all across Wisconsin here. You can head on over to wisconsincaps.com and click on the public events page, and you can get all that information and more. If you want to show your support for all things here on the Untold Radio Network, here's how.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
All right, guys, my guest today is Mike Ricksecker. He is the author of the award-winning Travels Through Time, the Amazon bestseller A Walk in the Shadow, and Alaska's Mysterious Triangle, as well as several other historic paranormal books. He has appeared on multiple television shows and programs, including History Channel's Ancient Aliens and The Unexplained, Travel Channel's The Alaskan Triangle, Animal Planet's The Haunted, multiple series on Gaia, and more. Mike is the producer and director of the docuseries The Shadow Dimension, available on several streaming platforms, and produces additional full-length content on ancient wisdom, lost civilizations, UFOs, and the supernatural on his extensive YouTube channel. For more than 7 years, he has hosted the Edge of the Rabbit Hole live stream show, and he also hosts Connecting the Universe interactive class on his online training platform, the Connected Universe Portal. He operates his own book publishing and video production company, Haunted Roads Media, representing a number of authors and winning the award for excellent media in the paranormal field at the 2019 Stockfest Film Festival. Mike also hosts the Stargates of Egypt, Ancient Egypt tour, an exploration of Egypt's pyramids, temples, and lost advanced technologies, the secret of esoteric alchemy, and ancient stargates. He is a native of Cleveland, Ohio. Mike is a U.S. Air Force veteran with a background in intelligence and a degree in computer simulation programming. He has been researching unexplained phenomenon across the world for over 30 years. Please welcome to the show, Mike Ricksecker. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me, Barnaby. I really appreciate it. You didn't have to read all that off. I know it's a lot, but I appreciate it.
My viewers like to play a game of how many times I mess up, and I was doing so well until I got to Egypt, and that's where we stumbled through today's show. So.
That's all good. I do appreciate it.
No, man, that's amazing. Like I was telling you before the show, like I know about you, like so much about like the Shadow Dimension and your docuseries and stuff, and the Egypt tours and that. But I mean, there's so many layers to all the stuff that you've done, and that like I didn't know you had your own publishing company and like all this stuff. Like you've dabbled in so many different things. It's just such a rich history of stuff that you have.
Yeah, I've got a lot of things on my plate. The publishing company, I mean, that came out or came about 10 years ago. So I had a lot of people. You know, I'd published some books by that point in my life. My first book came out in 2004. So I'd worked with publishers and agents and things like that over the years. So people would ask me for advice. Hey, how do I go about getting published? And I would give them some advice, some pointers, some tips, and then kind of throw them to the wolves. So good luck. And so it kind of dawned on me, because I had done a couple like little self-published ebooks, that, hey, I could actually be my own publisher, put together my own publishing house. And instead of just giving these people advice and throwing them to the wolves, I could actually go ahead and publish them and make sure that their work gets represented in a nice and professional way. So yeah, it's like one of those things that I took on years ago, just trying to help others in this field that were trying to get published.
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, there's so many people that, you know, we see at conventions and stuff that have books and just starting out and trying to get it, and, you know, trying to work with different publishing companies and putting over like stuff in this weird world that we're in, you know, like
Right.
how do you get a book published on, you know, half the stuff that we talk about, like shadow people, and that, like, most of the people just bat an eye and go, yeah, we don't want to publish that won't sell or something, you know, and it's so hard to find that.
Yeah, it's a lot more difficult through a traditional publishing company. It's such a niche market that they don't want to take that on. So a lot of people resort to self-publishing, which, you know, it's great. You know, there's two sides to the coin here. It's great that anybody can, you know, publish themselves these days. You know, so many people were a long time ago. They were thwarted from being able to get their work out there because there were, you know, these gatekeepers you had to go through. So now anybody can get their work published. However, and I'm not trying to offend anybody here, but that leads to some really, you know, sloppy work, and that sort of thing. So it's always good to have it kind of go through that filter, go through different editors, have some professional people actually do the formatting and put the cover art together so that you actually have a professional looking piece of work that is on this more esoteric type of subject matter. So yeah, it's one of those things that I've helped. I've about 15 different authors. So it's not a large publishing company, but there's a handful of people that I work with. Yeah.
That's awesome. That was great. You know, plus I'm sure you do a lot more work with getting it in front of more people. You know, like a lot of times self-publishing, you put it out through one venue like Amazon or whatever, but having a publishing company that helps promote it and get that out there as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, because the bookstores, they don't want to work with Amazon because they view Amazon as a competitor. So even though they technically could order a supply of books from them, they don't want to do that. So you work with some other printers, like Ingram, for example, is another one that I use, and bookstores and gift shops are more apt to go to their catalog and order from them. So that helps, as well as if you go to Haunted Road Media's social media, like the Facebook page, you'll see that every day we are promoting somebody's work. Even people that published with me, you know, 8, 9, 10 years ago, I'm still actually posting, hey, this book is still available. It's, even though it's, I don't say even though it's a little bit older, but, you know, if you actually look at the book, you'll discover, oh, it's a little bit older, but you may not have even known it existed because, you know, at certain points in time, it kind of falls off the radar on platforms like Amazon. And the author might not even be promoting it themselves anymore, but here we are, Haunted Road Media still posting it. So
that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, let's talk about some of your books here. So the first one that we got up here, we can start back here if we want. The Alaskan Mysterious Triangle. I think that was one of your older ones as well. But we got that one, and we also have the Walk in the Shadows here, which is kind of where I want to get started today. Like
that one's actually older than Alaska's Mysterious Triangle.
Is it?
Yeah, Alaska's Mysterious Triangle came out 2022.
Okay.
It's Walk in the Shadows. Yeah, was a couple years before that. So, but that's okay. I won't begrudge it.
Sorry. Interesting. Well, so let's talk about this one. So I guess let's start at the very basic of, you know, what is the difference between a ghost and a shadow person, or are they the same thing? How do you define a shadow entity?
Well, I mean, a shadow entity really is just the way that our eyes are interpreting the light, that whatever that being is, and it can be a lot of different things, that is the way that our eyes are actually perceiving them. We only see into a very narrow band of the entire spectrum. And, you know, so here's what I like to say is that, you know, we're talking about many different types of beings, many different types of species, so to speak, that are using the same energetic modality to enter into our world or our dimension. So yeah, they could be a human spirit that doesn't fully manifest as an apparition, and we're just getting a shadowy energy signature. They could be some sort of extraterrestrial. They could be some sort of interdimensional being. They could be actually a light being. And again, our eyes are only taking in a certain narrow band of the spectrum, so we might just be seeing the core of the thing and not the actual light emanating from it. We could be talking about, time slips or even time travelers or astral projections. They can be in a variety of different things, interdimensional beings and so forth. And it's just the way that our eyes are interpreting the light. It takes that investigative work to figure out, okay, what exactly are we dealing with in this particular situation?
Interesting. So you also have a whole there it is. You have a whole documentary series, the Shadow Dimension, as well, that's out. So you've gone out and investigated these things, and you just said that there's all different types, different dimensional beings and stuff like that. What did you find during this series? Like, what kind of beings were predominant, we'll say?
Yeah, it was a interesting series to film because we did that right in the middle of COVID. So a lot of the places that we had lined up to go to and investigate couldn't do. So there's a second part to that that's going to be coming out, again, fingers crossed, later this year. So yeah, this is a 6-part docuseries. It's airing on Tubi TV, the Roku channel, several other streaming platforms. And so what we ended up doing, there were 2 places that we primarily went to here, the Conjuring House out in Harrisville, Rhode Island, and Mineral Springs Hotel out in Alton, Illinois. Both very notoriously haunted, both have reported shadow activity, and both have reported the possibility of portals being there. So I wanted to really investigate the idea that these beings may be using the portals to traverse from wherever they're coming from, their dimension, into ours, or is it just that because that energy is there that may be kicking up the portal, is that helping these things to manifest? And then we also had a lot of others kind of jump on a Zoom call again during COVID, jump on a Zoom call and relate a lot of their stories to us, things that they had experienced. So we talked about a lot of the different types of phenomena. We talked about like the ancient origins of shadow people, how we can find traces of stories of shadow beings all the way back to ancient Egypt, ancient Sumer. So we covered like really a wide breadth of information. And the second part is going to get into visiting Hinsdale House there. We did visit Hinsdale House. It was a couple of years ago now. We do actually go out to Egypt and investigate out in Egypt. And of course, there's the Alaska Triangle where I experienced shadow activity up there as well.
Interesting. Let's talk about the Egypt stuff. I know you do the whole travel thing there and that, and so tell me a little bit about the whole history of the shadow people in Egypt. Like, is this documented on the pyramids or in the hieroglyphs, or where?
Yeah, so you're going to find zero documentation of anything on the pyramids. That's one of the reasons why they're so mysterious, because the ancient Egyptians, they covered everything in hieroglyphs, right? All their temples, their tombs, all of it. But then you look at the pyramids and there's nothing there. So it's like, I don't think the Egyptians built these. Well, that's a story for another time. But yeah, you find in the ancient Egyptian culture that they believed in many different parts of the spirit. And one of those was the shadow part of the spirit, which they called the kabit. So while most of the other parts upon death, while most of the other parts of the spirit would pass on to the constellation of Orion, 2 parts would stay here on Earth. The Ka, which was the animated part of the soul, and the shadow, the Kabit. And the Ka would kind of roam around for a little bit. So you find in a lot of the tombs, like the false doorway, some of them actually contain Ka statues that this part of the soul could inhabit and walk around within the statue. And then eventually it would pass through that doorway and again onto the constellation of Orion. But the shadow was always here to stay, to continue to roam around. And so you will see in some of the tombs depictions of this. You'll have like the bobirds, which is another part of the soul, flying away, and you'll see here's the shadow standing in front of the tomb because it's left here.
So why did it get left behind? I mean, like,
yeah, it's that concept that that everything is, that we have a connection from this world onto the next, onto that afterlife world, and really essentially another dimension. So we always have that connection back to here. So it's really just kind of a shadowy form of ourselves. This may be, we don't know specifically. This may be the way that they explain some of their supernatural activities, some of their ghosts, that sort of thing. Even like the Native Americans, depending on the tribe, kind of had similar concepts, multiple parts of the soul, where you had the kind of more the ghostly part of it, and then you had more of the shadow part of it, and the ghostly part of it would move on, and then the shadow was still here to remain and roam around, just kind of like that remnant of a person. So I think this was their way of explaining, that they felt maybe grandma was still, in the house or something like this. But it was always this connection from this world to the next. And you have to think about the ancient Egyptians. We call it the afterlife, but that's not the way that they viewed it. To them, this was just another part of life. It was just another aspect of it, that this was just a journey that they were taking along infinity, because they don't really believe in death. And when you actually look at like the Egyptian Book of the Dead, we call it the Book of the Dead, it's really the book of going forth by day. And you see some of the stories that are within this, like the most famous one, the Papyrus of Ani. And Ani was a scribe back in the day. And in this particular scroll, it's like the most beautiful and ornate one that we have. It's his whole afterlife journey. Like he starts off this whole thing dead. He's there with his wife Tutu, and they're going through the journey. And he gets to one of the creation gods, Atum, and he asks Atum, what will be the span of my life? Which is a really weird question to ask if he's dead, how long he's going to live, right? Mm-hmm. And Atum tells him that you'll be, your life will be from millions and millions of years on millions and millions of years. So when we talk like time travel, this is that idea of layering time. But within this, we're given that picture that the ancient Egyptians believed that essentially their life was eternal, and what we call the afterlife was just one aspect of that.
So do the Egyptians have like a reincarnation thing then?
That's really what it comes down to. So one of their it's really our most ancient alchemical symbol, the Ouroboros, the symbol of the snake eating its own tail, which is the symbol of recycle and renewal. So when you look at like the burial shrine of King Tut, this is the first place where we really see it, but we know that they used it beforehand. We just don't know for how long, and we haven't come across that particular artifact, but we see it on King Tut's burial shrine, the snake eating its own tail surrounding him. We see it in a lot of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings on the walls. And so, they believed that many different aspects of this. So yes, they wanted the king to come back, his soul to come back. They also wanted, they also believed this is part of the earth, and they also believed this as the universe. There's always that constant recycle and renewal.
Interesting. I actually was listening to some stuff on the pyramids and a little bit about the Egypt mythology and stuff like that and their beliefs in that. So and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but when they passed away, their soul would get weighed and it would be like versus a feather. Like if your soul was lighter than a feather, if you did good, you could go on to the afterlife and that. But if you were not, you were stuck in basically this like shadow realm, right? Or you wouldn't be able to reincarnate or pass on to the afterlife.
And that's I've heard some of that before in my research. I really haven't come across that, because they would, immediately upon death, they are preparing the body. They would do all that mummification process to prepare the body for the afterlife. This was a journey that you were going to make. And they even had, when I have a couple over there, they even had like little figurines that they would, put in your tomb to act as servants for you in the afterlife. So it was always a journey that you're going to make. And so, you had the Anubis there, and everybody always thinks like Anubis is this bad guy. And basically, it's like the Grim Reaper of the Egyptian culture. But all his job was to guide you to the afterlife. Like we're going to take you to the afterlife. So he was the ferryman, right? So yeah, this was always a journey that you were to make. The idea of kind of getting stuck almost like in a purgatory. That kind of flies in the face of a lot of what I studied with ancient Egypt.
Okay. But
I'm not exactly sure where that
yeah. Like I said, I'm not sure. It was a thing on the pyramids and stuff, and they were talking about kind of that, but the way they interpreted it, it was more of like if your soul wasn't worthy, you have like Amet and stuff that ate your heart or the soul. Like, and maybe I mean, you obviously have studied a lot more Egypt than I have, but is that all right? At least the whole the weighing of the soul versus a feather, and it's a set, isn't it? That is the
Set is kind of like the bad guy of ancient Egyptian culture. So he's the one that like murdered Osiris and all of that. So yeah, I don't know how deep you want to get in on this.
We started on shadow people and ended up
Right.
in Egypt here, and yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I if we're going down a different road, maybe we'll back up. But no, it's just I love Egypt, and I'm very interested in that. And now you got me going down that path. So
Sure.
well, let's back up to the shadow people then and stuff.
All right.
So we talked about the Egyptian, being talked about in Egyptian mythology and stuff. Where else do we see this documented throughout history? Like where's this coming from? Like shadow people?
I mean, really, you can find it throughout every culture across the world for thousands and thousands of years. Like I said, you can find it back in ancient Sumer with Alu. He was a binding spirit that would hover over people at night. You have the Pisadira down in Brazil, which is that's more of like one of those like the old hag syndrome, the pressing down. And you even had the Karabasan in Turkey, the dark presser. You can Google this and you find like this massive list. And I include several examples in my book as well. So this is something that's been with us for forever. And even like back in depending on the culture, they had different names for these different entities. So 3,000 years ago, they weren't necessarily saying shadow person, but we do see the term shadow people like back in the 1800s during the spiritualism movement. That was a term that they were using back then, and came across a really fascinating account. Madame d'Esperance, who was she was a physical medium during that time, and just in a newspaper article where she was giving an interview where the house that she grew up in as a little girl, she had both shadow people and ghosts within this house. And she was scared of the ghost, and she had actually befriended the shadow people that were in the house. So anytime that she was encountering a ghost, she would ask the shadow people in the house to help her out, which is really a different dichotomy than we look at it today. A lot of people look at shadow people as, evil and all this sort of thing. And again, it really just depends on the particular shadow. And even with her, so that was her dynamic in the house that she grew up in. But then when she got older, got married, moved into another house, and encountered different entities there, the shadows that were in this new house were different than the ones in the house that she grew up in. These she was a little bit more spooked about. So kind of again adheres to that idea that all of these different entities are different depending on which ones you're actually interacting with.
So, do you think that there's I don't know, for lack of a better word, like a species of shadow entity that, we have different things, obviously, but like, is there a specific group of things that are maybe not so nice, or, where we get this kind of old hag story and stuff? Like, is there a distinct species or entity?
I'm going to say that there is not a specific shadow person entity. They are a variety of different entities. They are a variety of different species, and it's the way that our eyes are interpreting that light that is reflecting off of them. Now, there are some that we interpret, that we see as shadows, that sure, they're nasty and nefarious. There are some that are actually very good, that are actually benevolent and do things to help people out. Most seem to be just kind of like in the middle. They're rather benign. They're neither good nor evil. You see a lot that are just kind of like watchers and observers, and what are they doing? I mean, it's creepy if you wake up in the middle of the night and you see one just kind of standing there. And just because it's standing in your room doesn't make it evil. It just means it's standing there in your room and it's watching. You have to. It's an invasion of our privacy, but okay, take into context, what it is actually doing. If it's not actually doing anything to harm you, then, a lot of them, we see just maybe walking down a hallway, or we see them out in the woods, or we'll see them during the day. So, and they come in all different shapes and forms and sizes. Some are, very solid. Some are rather translucent. Some have red eyes. Some wear hats. Some wear hoods. Some are just like little wisps. You got crawlers. You've got all different kinds of these forms. So they're all very different.
Very good. I think that's very important to point out, because a lot of the times, people kind of lump it all under one group. If I see a shadow entity, it's a shadow person, and that's the end of that. People don't realize that there could be more than one different thing going on there. So
yeah, and there absolutely is. Yeah, people want simplicity. Like, okay, if I see this, then it means that. Well, no, it's not just that simple. And that's what my book kind of helps to break down, is that like the first, I have it separated into different parts. So the first part gets into like all the different physical characteristics, and that's what humans do. They try to categorize and compartmentalize, to try to understand, okay, what is it that we're dealing with? I have a whole section there on sleep paralysis and how that is related. Then I get into, okay, what actually are these things? So that's where I get into like the interdimensional beings and extraterrestrials and things like that. And then I address the last part, I address the whole issue of demons, because you have people out there that are like, oh, you see a shadow, oh my gosh, it's a demon. No. Sorry. I mean, here's the thing. For all the research that I've been doing across the decades, all the investigations that I've been on, there's one that was demonic. And yes, it dealt with a red-eyed shadow entity. It doesn't mean every shadow person with red eyes or every shadow person is demonic. And we were really hesitant to call it that. It took having a renowned demonologist come out, Carl Johnson, to classify that. And even he's really hesitant to label stuff demonic. Like I had him on my show. I'm good friends with Carl, have been since that investigation. And had him on my show a couple of years ago, and was like, Carl, okay, we've known each other a long time. You've been doing this these investigations like this for 50 years. When was the last time that you actually had a case which you labeled as demonic? How prevalent are demon cases? And he said, well, I get called out on that stuff all the time. But Mike, the last time that I actually deemed a case actually as a demonic infestation was that investigation that we did in 2010 for the television show we were filming at the time, was The Haunted, was that particular case in Edmond, Oklahoma. And this was over 10 years after the fact. So it's like, okay, here's a guy, this is what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And it had been that long. And it was just that one particular case where he had, deemed it demonic. So, when people kind of like immediately jump to that, it's like, well, no, take a step back. It might just be a nasty human spirit, because, people who are jerks in life tend to be jerks in death too. So, you kind of have to take that step back to really kind of understand, okay, what is it that we are dealing with here? We might just be misinterpreting it. We might just put it into our own context.
Absolutely. And guys, we are live today in studio talking with Mike Ricksecker about shadow people and time slips and time travel. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments section. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Show your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our show's knowledgeable hosts and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
All right, guys, we are back here. We appreciate everyone that is a Super Chats member here on the Untold Radio Network. It really helps out our station and keeps us going here. But so, Mike, you've kind of alluded to another variety of these shadow entities, and those would be like time slips, right? So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so, okay, we have to kind of examine the nature of time when we're talking about time slips. So, okay, we have up to 11 hyperspatial dimensions, 0 through 10. Our consciousness is in the fourth dimension that we call time. So basically that gives us access to all the dimensions that are below us: third, second, first, and zero is like a point. First dimension's a line, second dimension is a plane, so like flat surface, and then 3D is all of our three-dimensional objects. Our consciousness is in fourth. So time, even though we call that time, time is just a human concept that we've used to describe our reality, that we use to keep track of when to plant the crops, when to show up at work at the right moment so our supervisors don't get upset, this sort of stuff. But it actually really doesn't exist. It's something we've created for those purposes. And so from those other dimensions, fifth, sixth, seventh, and beyond, just like the way that we view a three-dimensional object, they see time, our fourth dimension, as a whole object. What's interesting about us is we're actually multidimensional beings. Our fourth dimensional consciousness is inside our third dimensional body. When the 3D body falls away, our fourth dimensional consciousness is still around, right? So some people might call it the spirit, some people might call it the soul, whatever. It's essentially our consciousness. Now, we might decide to hang around here for a while. That's where we get our ghosts. Or we might proceed to go on to, well, that's always the big question, right? Where do we go to after we die? Is it another one of those dimensions that we go to? Or do we go to something that's even further beyond our comprehension? We could get into like simulated universe and reincarnation and all that, but essentially we go off somewhere. And even science is starting to get on board with, yes, there is a consciousness. It does reside in the body. It does go somewhere after you die. But those particular scientists, Stuart Hameroff, Robert Penrose, they're hesitant to say where it goes. They just say it goes off into the cosmos. Okay. But in any case, So anybody from 5th, 6th, 7th onward would have complete access to time, which means everything here right now, as far as time is concerned, is concurrent, past, present, and future. So if everything is here, so take where you're sitting right now, everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen is all there right now. Each of those moments, I liken it to a stack of photographs. This is where I get what I call stack time theory. Each of those moments, like a photograph and a giant stack of photographs, each with their own frequency. And sometimes two of those moments will resonate at the same frequency for a moment, and we'll get a glimpse of another. And that's what we would call a time slip. So you would actually see something play out right in front of you, that it might be a whole scene, it might be a person, and you're actually having an interaction with it. And this is, again, something that in many cases we've kind of chalked up to ghosts and hauntings and these sorts of things. And it might be, but it also might be a time slip. Again, this is where it takes your investigative skill to try to figure out, okay, what in the world did I just witness? Some of these time slips can appear as shadows. And this is where I'll give an example here. A few years ago, I was on a different podcast, and there's a story that was related to me from a very credible source. And the story was this young man, when he was a small child, he had walked into the kitchen one day, and over by the kitchen table, he saw this tall, dark, hooded figure, scared him to death, boom, ran right out of there. And this became like the hooded shadow person story of the household. He thought the house was haunted because he saw this this shadow person that was there. And this story prevailed for a number of years. When he grows up, young man now, early adulthood, and he's in the kitchen. He's making himself a sandwich at the kitchen table. He's wearing a hoodie. And all of a sudden he sees walking into this kitchen this short shadow person that stops and then boom, takes right off back out of the kitchen. And it hits him. Oh my God. That was me when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I actually saw myself, wearing the hoodie and everything, but it just came off. And that becomes a question. Why did it only come off as a shadow? Why didn't he see himself fully formed? Because we have other time slip stories where, the beings are fully formed. Well, we're talking about frequency here. And those that are a little bit older, like myself, we remember a time back with radios. Yes, in your car, you still have the dial, but it kind of clicks from one digital number to. But back in the day, you just had that band that you had to really carefully tune to get on the station perfectly right, so that you could hear it clearly. But if you're a little bit before or a little bit after, it came off staticky. And so I believe this is kind of what that is that he wasn't perfectly in sync with the frequency. He was a little bit before, a little bit after, not perfectly tuned in. And so for him, it came off as a shadow rather than fully formed.
Interesting. I've heard similar stories to that, like the little boy in the kitchen before of, lady sees this person walk into her dining room or something, and it screams and runs off. Mm-hmm. And then the same, like years later, she sees like from the other angle of, walking into the living room, and there's this whole family sitting in the living room, and she screams and runs off because she doesn't know why all these people are in her house. And so that's interesting. So Lee would like to know what would happen if they touched.
It depends on how tuned in we are. I mean, you could physically touch somebody from another point in time. Or, if it's not completely coherent, we might pass through something like this. It really depends on the particular situation and how much that other point in time has resonated through. So with those shadows, I doubt that they would actually, feel anything physical if they had actually touched. But some of these other ones where, they are fully formed, I believe that they could actually physically touch. and it would be interesting because they would have that memory. So some of these where, they're distinctly, you got to keep in mind. So a lot of times we talk about, seeing some vision from the past, right? Well, that person from the past is actually seeing the future. So what would amaze me is if you could pass something, back and forth. And when we look at like some of these out of place artifacts, artifacts that, they date, according to our carbon dating, they are thousands and thousands of years old, but you're scratching your head. How in the world did they, have something like this back then? Did that perhaps get passed through some sort of time slip like that? Maybe it was a portal they passed through. There are a lot of different possibilities here, but that is one that if it was formed up enough that maybe they had enough time to pass something through.
Okay, so looking at like more of the science behind this, what do you think causes those time slips, or the moment, like, okay, just using the little boy and himself for an example, what caused those two to line up?
Yeah, that's the big question. What's the catalyst? And if we knew precisely what that catalyst was, we can make it happen at will. We'd be able to do it. So it's kind of like, so again, everything comes down to frequency, resonance, energy, vibration. And when we look at the energy of the earth, the magnetism of the earth, it's pulsating. It's not just like a constant stream. So like when we look at like our ancient sites of power, like stone circles, when we look at triangle areas, Alaska Triangle, Bermuda Triangle, those types of areas where, yes, there's been strange activity reported. Well, it doesn't always happen. And that's because the energy from the earth that's rising up to interact with the metals and minerals of the area to create those other more localized electromagnetic fields. It's not a constant. And this is how the ancients knew. We want to go to these sites at specific points in time, because we believe that, maybe during the solstice or something, it's going to be greater, so they were trying to play with that too. What's a common denominator? Science. So like we have, out in space, we know we have portals out in space. That is something science is actually admitted to. We believe, from our field that they're down here too. And it makes sense. So because what's happening out there, they call them X points. And it's basically the Earth's magnetism interacting with the solar wind. And even though they've had satellites up there for almost 10 years now studying these, they couldn't tell you when they open. Like there's no predictive model. They can't tell you when they open. They can't tell you how large they're going to open, and they can't tell you how large or how long the opening is going to last. They just, there's no rhyme or reason or pattern to it all. It happens. And when it does happen, then they study it, and then it goes away. So, and what these portals do essentially allow like the protons and electrons from the sun to hit the earth much quicker. So I believe that sort of same thing is happening here. We don't know exactly, when it's going to happen, how long it's going to happen for, how strong it's going to be, all of that. It just does. And if we knew those pieces, that's when we would be able to harness it ourselves and make it happen at will. We could open our own portals. We could perform our own time travel. And we know that science is trying to figure that out in the lab. They created baby wormholes here in the lab almost 2 years ago. So they're trying to do it. They're trying to figure it out. But yeah, we haven't quite figured it out yet.
So you talked about like the idea of passing something through these time slips. So in areas like the Bermuda Triangle, the Alaskan Triangle, and stuff like that, where you have these planes that disappear and ships that disappear and stuff like that, do you think that that's possibly what's happening? And is there any evidence to show that in a different time a ship randomly appeared somewhere?
Well, I think you find that in a lot of the legends and lore from the indigenous tribes. So like when we filmed the Alaska Triangle television show, our first episode was on the missing Douglas Skymaster from 1950. And pretty much it was January. So yeah, it was cold, but it was pretty much a beautiful day. Like there were a few clouds in the sky, and they'd lost contact with it around the Snag area, Yukon territory, still technically within the Alaska Triangle. And they never could find the thing. To this day, it's still missing. And even there's a smaller plane that went down in around the same area. A couple found that, boom, like immediately. But this large one, they couldn't. So where did it go? So we, talked about a lot of different possibilities of what could have happened. And one of those was, did it pass through a portal? There was some radio chatter that was really kind of cryptic that, they caught a couple of weeks later, and they wondered, was it them? Was it, something that came back through the portal? Maybe, it would have been on a different wavelength and frequency than if it had passed through the portal of where it would have gone to. So there's a lot of different things. But here's the thing that I threw out that they actually didn't talk about in the show, but I put in my books, is, okay, let's say it did pass through a portal. Okay, we have to ask the question, where did it go, right? Did it go to another dimension, somewhere else in the cosmos? Did it go to another point in time? So if it did go to another point in time, okay, at what point in time did it go to? And there's precedent for this with Bruce Gernon down in the Bermuda Triangle, where, all of a sudden he had traveled 100 miles in like 3 minutes. It was really kind of a time travel sort of experience that he had down there through, basically it was like this tunnel that had formed up in the clouds. And so, okay, let's say it did travel in time, and I just throw an arbitrary number out there. Let's say it went back in time 500 years. Okay, well, what would the indigenous tribes have thought of seeing a plane in the sky 500 years ago? Because they have no context whatsoever of an airplane. To them, the things that are in the sky are birds. And this one would have been very large, very loud, maybe thunderous in nature. So is this where like some of our Thunderbird legends come from, that the indigenous peoples at the time witnessed essentially a time travel incident with some of our modern airplanes that have gone missing? And that's the only way that they knew how to describe it, was as a Thunderbird.
And I'm sure you're aware, like some of the depictions in Egypt and stuff too, of these like planes or helicopters and stuff like that they show. If these things flew back and ended up over there, you'd have that as an explanation as well.
Well, yeah, the depictions there at Abydos, there's a lot of controversy over those, but ancient Egypt had so much technology there that we're not giving them credit for that. I mean, they may have built some of those things themselves. There's a room there. It's the room of ships, and you actually, this is something that we just discovered here this past tour that we did, and the whole room, when you step back and look at it, it's like, this is like a dry dock, actually. And the way it's angled up, it's like, and you see a lot of their depictions of ships on the sky. Like you look at the ceiling at Dendara, beautiful, ornate, very blue. You have all these ships across the night sky. And here you are, you're sitting there at Abydos looking at it, and they're kind of right down the road from each other, several miles, but you're looking at, yeah, this could be a dry dock leading the ship right out. Yeah.
So then my other way is to look at it backwards from the other point. If you're talking about things from the future going back in time, or present day going back in time, when you look at areas like Skinwalker Ranch that are seeing these orbs and other UFOs and stuff, do you think that that's stuff that's coming from our future coming back through?
Could be. Here's the thing that I want to throw out there, because I have heard some people say, and again, it's, be careful with being all inclusive. We talked about that earlier with shadow people. Well, there are some of my colleagues who are saying, well, UFOs and UAPs, they're not extraterrestrials at all. They're just us from the future. Mm-hmm. I'll be careful with that. They may be indigenous to Earth from the future. Doesn't necessarily make it us. Humans have only been around, anatomically erect humans have only been around for about 315,000 years. Very, very short period of time of the entire lifespan of the Earth. You look at, okay, dinosaurs went extinct 64 million years ago. I mean, that's just over 1% of the entire lifespan of the Earth ago. Okay, so we've got another 5 billion years that this planet's going to be around before the sun becomes a red giant and destroys us. We're not getting out of that, by the way. So we better do something to get off the planet at some point. In any case, millions of years from now, humans might not be here at all, but there might be another intelligent life form that evolves, develops civilization, and within their technology, maybe they develop some time travel technology. Or it could be an extraterrestrial civilization does find our planet, deems it habitable for them, again, maybe millions of years from now after we're gone, and decides to colonize here. They develop their technology. Maybe they develop time travel technology and go back and see what the Earth was like. So yeah, we could be dealing with time travelers from the future, but that doesn't necessarily make it us. So you got to be careful with some of that. But with Skinwalker, yeah, I mean, we could be dealing with some sort of time travel there. We could be dealing with other dimensions. We could be seeing some sort of plasma events out there. Here's what it comes down to. And I wish they would just get out the big drills and drill. Just do it. It's like they play around with it every once in a while. We'll scatter in an episode here or there. We'll drill into the side of the mesa. Yeah, what did they do that like 2 or 3 years ago? And it took them like 2 or 3 years to finally drill into the side of the mesa again. Like, thanks guys, because they actually came back with some interesting metals. Okay, do it, but now bigger. Or they had some, when they went to their little triangle there and drilled down, they had some interesting things happen, and then they didn't go back. It's like, bring in the guys from Oak Island, the huge caissons, and let's do it, man. Because I think it's really, to me, easy to explain when they talk about UFO being buried under the mesa and all that sort of stuff. Maybe not a UFO, but there is something in the ground. When you look at like triangle areas around the world and some of these energetic hotspots, it's kind of like what I was talking about before. And I'll just give the full description. So these areas, it all comes back down to the Earth's core. So you have this molten ball of metal that's spinning and spinning and spinning, creating this magnetic shield that protects our planet. It's a great thing for us because it keeps us from being irradiated by the sun and the entire planet getting fried. It's a good thing. But as that magnetism passes through the Earth, through the mantle, through the crust, it's interacting with different metals and minerals. And depending on what it interacts with and the size of that deposit, it creates these different localized magnetic fields. And so that's essentially, again, what's happening in these triangle areas is we don't know specifically what's buried under there, but there is something. And even like in Alaska, U.S. Department of the Interior did a survey up there back in the 60s, and they discovered what they called negative anomalies. They know strange stuff goes on up there because of what's in the ground. So with Skinwalker Ranch, yeah, there's something significant buried under the ground there. And, it's okay, drill and figure out what it is. I think it might actually be an ancient meteorite, that's buried under there. That's, as the magnetism passes through the Earth, it's, hitting this, giant ball of whatever that meteorite was made of to create this localized magnetic field and make all these different strange things happen. So again, it all comes back down to energy, frequency, vibration. So could be, just creating these different frequencies to be able to interact with different, could be moments of time, dimensions, all these things like we talked about before.
And a meteorite would make sense, if it's this giant meteor, as it comes through the atmosphere and peels off layers and stuff and burns up, it's going to be more of a, a disc shape like they claim is in the mesa and stuff from what they've looked at. So that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And you're going to get to, as, like you said, as it peels that away, you're going to get to the core of whatever's in that meteorite. So, yeah,
and molten it down and stuff as well.
Yeah. And I believe it was a pretty good size. It was a big one. And if not that, then, maybe it's just something, it could be a very, very large deposit of something naturally occurring within the Earth. So, but the only way you're going to figure that out is to drill. So yeah, it's great. You know, the stuff that they're doing with the rockets is wonderful, but they've been doing that for years now. It's like, okay, we get it. The rocket's doing weird stuff when you shoot it up into the air. Now drill down
Yeah.
to figure out what's making that happen. You have this great LiDAR data that, you know, you've got like this black spot right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Drill it, get those big, get the guys from Oak Island, come down with big caissons and just do it, man.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we are coming up on the end of the hour here, and it's absolutely awesome having you on, man. We are having a blast here. We have a question for you. Can you talk about the soul phone?
Define soul phone.
Yeah, I was hoping you knew what that was. So,
I mean, is this the? I mean, if soul phone, just given the name, if that means like the ability for the soul to communicate back to source, then I mean we all have that innate ability within us to basically, you know, have our consciousness talk and interact with the universe. And there are a lot of different terms for this, whether it's, you know, collective unconscious, you know, people accessing the Akashic records, accessing eternal knowledge, which is kind of what I call it, or you know, if all time is concurrent and present here, like we were discussing earlier, then that means, I do believe in reincarnation, that means all of our past lives and future lives are here with us. So, you know, is there a way to communicate back and forth between those? And you have a lot of hypnotherapists and people like that you know, allow you to, you know, basically have like those past life regressions and things like that, and be able to talk to your higher self. And so a lot of different things that we could talk about here, but it's all here, it's all concurrent, and so we have that ability to access it.
Good. Does that answer your question? And if you not, you just add it to the comments section there, and we'll try and straighten it out, I guess. Awesome. So your new book here is The Travels Through Time Inside the Fourth Dimension, Time Travel, and Stacked Time Theory. Where can people find it, and where can they get it?
I mean, yeah, anywhere books are sold. So sure, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. You can walk into a store and take a look in their, I guess, their metaphysical section. There's a lot of science in this book without being too sciencey. There's a lot of metaphysics in it without being too metaphysical. But at its heart, it's a philosophy book. So you might even find it in the philosophy section of the store. But if they don't have it, you can always just go to the front desk and have them order it up for you. So
very cool. Awesome. All right. If anybody else has any last minute questions, get them in. It doesn't look like Baron is coming back. I don't know. Hopefully that answered it. I was thinking, you know, kind of along the lines of what you were saying about like past lives and stuff, talking like the voice in your head or something maybe, but you know, so I don't know. Yeah. Interesting. But
it's all good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I don't want to take up too much of your time today as well, but this has been absolutely amazing. And, you know, I think I would love to have you come back sometime to just talk about Egypt, because I find that I've always been interested in, you know, the traveling Egypt exhibits and stuff, and King Tut, and all that stuff is just fascinating to me. And, you know, apparently
you should come with us one of these days on the Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour. We're going back next November. So November 2025 is our next tour.
That'd be really cool. I was like I said, I was listening to that podcast on pyramids and stuff, and I actually looked up flights to Cairo, and I'm like, I will definitely look into your tour then.
Yeah. Come with us. Because a lot of those, not to disparage anybody specifically, but you have a lot of those tours that are just like, here's the pyramids, here's the Sphinx, here's a temple. You know, we get into the nitty gritty of what all of these things mean. You know, some of those hidden secrets, we're diving into all of that. So yeah, if you want to know the real stuff, you got to come with us.
Awesome. There was a question online that can you go inside the Sphinx?
So, okay. Technically, yes. and there's a lot of controversy surrounding that. But and we have photos of Zahi Hawass coming up from under the Sphinx. So yeah, there is a chamber that's under there. There was a hole that was in the head that they filled in, and that, so again, controversial. Some people say, well, that was just, to help secure a headdress on it. But you look back 100 years ago and you see these newspaper articles where from the hole in the head, you got this passageway that leads down to this massive temple chamber that's under the Sphinx. And, of course, we've had people talk about, there being these hidden chambers under the Sphinx. So, yeah, like Edgar Casey, predicting under the paw and stuff like that. So there's certainly something within and under it, but it might not exactly be what people think.
Interesting. Yeah, Lisa's left paw. But no, I was just interesting because I know like you can buy tickets to go inside the different pyramids and stuff, it said, but then
there's no ticket to get in the Sphinx. There are, so you can get into the enclosure area around the Sphinx, but there's no way inside. I mean, you can see the opening, and basically that opening that Zahi Hawass came out from under, it was basically at the it's at the lion's butt to the left side of the lion's butt. Yeah, it's kind of weird to look at, but yeah, you can only get to the enclosure.
Awesome. Very cool. I always wondered that too. Like, was it a solid like statue, or did it have chambers and stuff inside of it?
Well, I mean, the Sphinx itself is solid piece of limestone. Now, they did carve down into the head. How far? Again, debatable. And there's whatever they were carving from the butt, and then there's the idea of stuff under the left paw, which when Schock and West did their seismographs, they did find, okay, there is some sort of chamber down there. Is it accessible through the Sphinx or through some other chamber? Because there's a labyrinth of different passageways and chambers and stuff like that under the Giza Plateau. So is it accessible from one of those other areas? We're not sure.
Interesting. Was there ever a second Sphinx, do you think, or do you know?
So yeah, that's been an interesting speculation. If there is, likely it would have been on the other side of the Nile. However, that would be gone because now you have the entire city that is over there. So people speculate that there was another Sphinx, but we have no idea where that would have been.
Interesting. Lee says, like the Moai, what's going on underground, or lots going on underground.
Yeah, there's a lot going on underground there. Yep.
Very cool. I know that they originally was like under sand when they found it and stuff. Have they tried to dig further down? Like, is that 100% the bottom of the Sphinx?
They've reached, as far as the Sphinx, that they've reached the limestone bedrock. That whole enclosure was built out of or carved out of the bedrock, and then those blocks were used to build the temple. That's right there. And then later dynasties came along and added the granite blocking around the internal limestone. So yeah, over the millennia, it's happened many times where the sands would come in, they would fill in the Sphinx enclosure, and one of the kings, one of the pharaohs would come along and say, oh, we want to restore this, and they dig it back out and they do some patchwork, and then over time it'd get buried again, and then we're going to dig it back out. So that cycle has happened again and again and again. They believe that this last 100 years that we've had the Sphinx dug out has probably been the longest amount of time it has spent out of the sand for many centuries or even thousands of years. And the sand has helped to preserve it. If it had been out in the elements for all of that time, it probably would have long since disintegrated by now.
Interesting. That's fascinating. I would love to go there. It's one of the places I always wanted to go, is to see all the pyramids and stuff. And so very cool.
It's definitely a life-changing experience.
I would imagine. So very cool. Well, I thank you so much for coming on here. Tell everybody, where can they find all your podcasts and shows and everything, your website and anything else that you got, any events coming up?
Yeah, go to MikeRicksecker.com. Check out my event schedule. You'll find the tours and everything there. So the information on Egypt, I have I'm going to be there at Michigan Paracon again in August. I have a Connecting the Universe exclusive masterclass in New Jersey. So this is a massive 4-part presentation on November 9th. Definitely encourage people to come out to that. And also, I got a bunch of events lined up for next year. But one of the other big ones is a Germany tour. So Mysteries of the Black Forest. That's their Mysterious Adventures tour. So you can get the information for that out there as well. All my podcast links and stuff like that are out there. And then my online learning platform, Connected Universe Portal. Basically, I say online learning platform, but it's a community of like-minded people coming together, discussing a lot of these topics. There's so much material out there. So you want all the Egypt stuff, it's there. You want all the time travel stuff, it's there. So much stuff has been uploaded there. So that's connecteduniverseportal.com.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it. And you are a wealth of knowledge on so many things. And I look forward to seeing you back out there again really soon.
Absolutely. We'll catch you later, Barnaby. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Take care.
You too.
All right, guys, that is our show for this week. That was Mike Ricksecker. His information is in the show notes. You can go and check out his website, and all of his documentaries and stuff. Links are on there, and his book, obviously, The Travels Through Time. You can get yourself a copy of that. And let's see. Coming up next week here on the Paranormal Spectrum, we have Castelia Theo is going to be joining us here. She is a medium that communicates with the elfin realm. So that is really exciting. I have spoken with her before on one of my other shows. She is a blast, and she's going to share all that with you guys there. And then coming up Monday on Monsters on the Edge, we have Todd Neese coming on to talk about all things Bigfoot. So that's what we got coming up here on the Untold Radio Network next week. Make sure that you guys like, subscribe, and share. And until next time, guys, stay well, be healthy, and I'll see you later. Take care.